and write it down. But not only write it down, divide it into 4 divisions from that same original Veda. Prepare explanatory section of the Vedas, summarized all the Vedas in Vedanta Sutra, massive work, and then reflecting, as one will do after completing an important task, asking himself, how did it come out? And he felt a pinprick. He felt discontented. And he was very surprised and pondering, why is that feeling? And as he was contemplating in this way, his spiritual master Narada Muni appeared at his ashram. And the result of the discussion between the two was an instruction from Narada to Vyasa to write one literature that is the result of his mature stage of samadhi in contemplation on the absolute truth, personality of Godhead Krishna, and then compose one literature that simply glorifies Krishna as that mature samadhi realization made available. So that's what Vyasadeva did, and this verse that we're discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, is precisely the concluding section. The 12th canto is from the concluding section of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll be discussing a verse from chapter 3, where Shukadeva Goswami is summarizing to Maharaj Parikshit the circumstances in each of the 4 ages. And because this literature is particularly intended to mitigate the miseries of people of this age of Kali, a lot of verses are presented describing the age of Kali itself. So we're going to take a look at some of those verses that precede this particular assignment of 12:3:52, 51. The age of Kali is a very dangerous age where all good qualities are destroyed. So Vyasadeva, through Shukadeva Goswami, starts to elaborate in great detail, many verses. Some of them will be speaking just now. In the age of Kali, people tend to be greedy, ill-behaved and merciless, and they fight one another without good reason. Unfortunate and obsessed with material desires, the people of Kali Yuga are almost all Shudras and barbarians. Not very inviting. When there is a predominance of cheating, lying, sloth, sleepiness, violence, depression, lamentation, bewilderment, fear, and poverty, that age is Kali, the age of the mode of ignorance. Sound familiar? Just click on the news and you'll find all of these things presented on a regular basis. Because of the bad qualities of the age of Kali, human beings will become short-sighted, unfortunate, gluttonous, lustful, and poverty-stricken. The women, becoming unchaste, will freely wander from one man to the next. Servants will abandon a master who has lost his wealth, even if that master is a saintly person of exemplary character. Masters will abandon an incapacitated servant, even if that servant has been in the family for generations. Cows will be abandoned or killed when they stop giving milk. All these things are existing in society today, but Vyasadeva wrote about them long before they happened, and it spirals downward and downward as the age progresses. Cities will be dominated by thieves. The Vedas will be contaminated by speculative interpretations of atheists. Political leaders will virtually consume the citizens. And the so-called priests and intellectuals will be devotees of their bellies and genitals. How will society be uplifted? There's 24 such verses in this chapter 3 of Canto 12. And after reciting so many of those verses comes this particular verse, well known within the Hare Krishna movement. Kaler doshanate rajan asti hyeko mahan gunan kirtanad eva krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajet. Didhi means ocean, and dosha means faults. So imagine what is an ocean of faults, and that's the age of Kali. Our scriptures teach us that everything that exists has both qualities and faults. We'll find this in Chaitanya Charitamrita, nicely described. Everything has qualities and faults. But Kali is such that it's not just with some faults, it's an ocean of faults. That's the characteristic. The list can go on and on. An ocean, how many waves in the ocean? How many waves of doshas are there in an ocean of faults? So it's not very inviting. But there is one eka, good quality, superlatively good quality, mahan gunaha, one good quality. What is that one good quality? Kirtanad eva krishnasya. Krishna kirtan. Krishna kirtan is that one good quality. And what's the feature of that Krishna kirtan? Two parts. Mukta sangha, the influence of the ocean of faults, which otherwise would contaminate any person who's living during this age of Kali, and then naturally by association becomes contaminated. One becomes liberated from such contamination. Mukta sangha. But not only that, not only the cleansing of the doshas, but param vrajet. This Krishna kirtan carries one to the spiritual world. Krishna kirtan carries one to the spiritual world. Param vrajet. We can go to Krishna directly, simply by Krishna kirtan. Not only after this life, but in this life we can be in Krishna's presence. Even in the midst of this doshanidhi, ocean of bad faults. Here's the translation of that wonderful verse. My dear king, Rajan, although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there is still one good quality about this age. What is that? Please tell us. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can become free from material bondage and be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. Mukta Sangha Param Vrajet. And we're celebrating the World Holy Name Day, or Holy Name Week, in honor of this important instruction. It's not only here in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, from the very first canto and throughout, the significance of chanting the holy name is spoken again and again. As a refrain, if one reads the Bhagavatam carefully, you'll see it emphasized again and again. The importance, the singular importance given to the chanting of the holy name. The very next verse, and the last verse of this Canto 12, Chapter 3, is another very celebrated verse within ISKCON. Krite yad dhyayato vishnum chaitayam yajato mukai drapare paricharyanam kalo tad hari kirtanat. We all know the verse because we hear it regularly. It's comparing, as the whole chapter is doing, so this is like a summary verse of the entire chapter. Krita Yuga. We're accustomed to saying Satya Yuga, but they mean the same. Krita Yuga, the means of achieving spiritual perfection, the Yuga Dharma, is dhyayate, meditation. Upon whom? Vishnu. Kriteya dhyayato Vishnum. One is encouraged to strive for perfection in Krita Yuga or Satya Yuga through the process of meditation. Then, in the next Yuga, Treta Yuga, the recommendation for achieving spiritual perfection is to worship Yajato, the personality of Godhead Vishnu, through sacrifice, Makai. Chaitayam Yajato Makai. The process of Vedic sacrifice is so prevalent in Dwapara Yuga as the means of achieving spiritual perfection. And then the next Yuga, during the time that Krishna appeared, Dwapara Yuga, is the Archana process, deity worship. And then in this age of Kali, Hari Kirtanat, that's the Yuga Dharma. And of course we know very well that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, appearing early in this age of Kali, descended, for one of the reasons for his descent was to inaugurate the Sankirtan movement, to bring the chanting of the holy name to the foreground throughout the world, throughout the whole society, for the whole entire age, especially the first 10,000 years of this age, is especially recognized as very, very significant. Meditation, sacrifice, fire sacrifice, deity worship, and the chanting of the holy name. It's not that the chanting of the holy name was not present in the previous yugas, etc. There's a mixture of these processes, but strong emphasis, singular emphasis given to the chanting of the holy name. In this age of Kali, there isn't another way. Our celebrated verse, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam Kalo, Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatiranyata. Its singular importance. Other processes surely should be taken up. Our meditation is meditation upon the sound of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, messages in relation to Krishna, and the holy name of Krishna. That's our meditation process. Our deity worship is accompanied with, begins with, in the middle and after, is the chanting of the holy name. Without deity worship, without the chanting of the holy name, deity worship is incomplete. And the sacrifice, the primary sacrifice, is the Sankirtan Yagya. That's our sacrifice. The other forms of sacrifice are certainly also parts of our Vaishnava process, but the essence is the chanting of the holy name. Even during the fire yagyas, the chanting of the holy name is singularly important. Here's Prabhupada's translation of that nice verse. Whatever result is obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwarapa Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, can be obtained in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This is the scriptural authority behind this very important and principal activity of the Hare Krishna movement, or ISKCON, this wonderful worldwide society that Srila Prabhupada gifted to the world to provide the opportunity for coming together, or solitary in your home and engaging in the chanting of the holy name, whether it's done musically or by performance of japa or any manner whatsoever. This is the power of the holy name, and that power has been gifted to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu over time, over generations and generations, and going into the future as well. The power is the power of the holy name. One of the greatest followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we know, is Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami was instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give teachings that elaborate on the process of bhakti, to awaken the dormant consciousness, Krishna consciousness of living entities. Here's a celebrated verse that focuses on the name. Atakshi Krishna namadi na bhaved grayam indriyai sevan mukhe hi jivadao swayameva sparatyada. The verse is saying essentially to understand Krishna, starting with his name, Namadi, or Krishna's form, or Krishna's qualities, or Krishna's pastimes, or anything in relation to Krishna which is fully transcendental. Material senses cannot enter there. Material senses can't project themselves, or the mind, reading the information from the senses or interpreting the information from the senses, cannot understand transcendence, because Krishna is far, far beyond. Transcendental means beyond the mind and the senses to be able to reach. So how are people in this age, or of any age, able to understand? Well, Rupa Goswami gives the answer. Of course, it's the bhakti process, but the bhakti process begins with service, starting with the tongue. Sevan mukhe hi jiva dao. Jiva, this is the tongue, spelled differently than the word jiva, the living entity. Jiva is the tongue. And with service with the tongue. Many times Srila Prabhupada would speak on this verse. Service by the tongue has these two functions, tasting and vibrating. Vibrating the holy name, vibrating the messages of transcendence, the messages we hear in Srimad Bhagavatam. This kirtan, Krishna kirtan, or Krishna katha, Krishna kirtan, is described by Bhaktisiddhanta not merely musical kirtan or musical kirtan and japa, but Krishna kirtan includes reciting the pastimes of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna, the form of Krishna, descriptions of all these things is included in Krishna Kirtan. This is the Sankirtan movement that includes all these things. So that's a form of service. And when one performs that service, then Svayam Eva Spurati. Spurati. Krishna can be seen. Krishna can be understood as he is. There's a very nice section in Canto 10, Chapter 38, one of my favorite sections of the Bhagavatam, is where Akrura, who has remained in Mathura assisting the wicked Kamsa, with one reason only: he wanted to see Krishna. He knew that Krishna would appear, it was foretold, and he was a pure devotee, very elevated personality, and he was sent by Kamsa to bring Krishna for his diabolical purposes. Akrura knew Kamsa is inviting his destruction. I don't mind being an instrument of Kamsa's destruction. And so he went to see Krishna, and as he was riding in his chariot, 22 verses describing his absorbed meditation, dhyayate, absorbed meditation on Krishna, specifically with the anticipation, eager anticipation, ecstatic expressions of transcendental emotion in anticipation of meeting Krishna, seeing Krishna face to face. So supposing you were told, by the end of the day, you're going to see Krishna face to face, what would you be feeling? Probably very happy, or more than happy. If you understood really what that meant, you would also be totally ecstatic with great eagerness to see Krishna. So Rupa Goswami is teaching us here in this verse. This provides us the opportunity to see Krishna and to understand Krishna as he really is. I really like Prabhupada's translation. Material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes, but when a conditioned soul is awakened to Krishna consciousness and renders service by using his tongue, to chant the holy name and taste the remnants of the Lord's food. The tongue is purified, and one gradually comes to understand who Krishna really is. I like that phrase. Understand who Krishna really is. So in this world, there are people that have some idea who Krishna is. Lord Brahma says, as far as I'm concerned, people may say they know who you are. But I don't know even the beginning of who you are. The unlimitedness of Krishna is beyond mortal capacity. So how are you going to know who Krishna really is, or understand who Krishna really is? Rupa Goswami is giving Lord Chaitanya's teachings, and the which are the same as the Srimad Bhagavatam's teachings, gradually how to come to the position of understanding who Krishna really is. How? Service. What kind of service? Service using the tongue, starting with using the tongue in service to Krishna by chanting the Lord's holy name and tasting the remnants of the Lord's food. In the conclusion, I'm going to show you a little video clip where Srila Prabhupada speaks of these 2 points, the chanting and the tasting of prasadam. So We're not there yet, but we'll get there shortly. I just making note of it so you can see from Rupa Goswami's writing in Prabhupada's translation how these two connect. It's service. And of the two, in the recording that we'll see, Prabhupada is laying emphasis especially to the holy name. Even before there was the facility for prasad distribution, just the chanting of the holy name, the chanting of the holy name, the chanting of the holy name brought the transformation that he was looking for within his audience when he came to America. Those of you that like to read Srimad Bhagavatam, I invite you to read the purport to this last verse of chapter 3, canto 12. In that purport, Srila Prabhupada makes references, the commentators, the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, make reference to several other scriptures that say the same thing that Srimad Bhagavatam is indicating, that the perfection in this age of Kali comes from the chanting of Krishna's holy name. How important is it? Perfection in this age of Kali, ocean of faults, comes from the chanting of the holy name. Commonly in the commentary of our acharyas, when addressing these two important verses, 51, 52, they also make reference to Canto 11, Chapter 5. This Chapter 5 of Canto 11 comes just before Uddhava Gita, a very important section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the circumstance is Narada pays a visit to Dwarka. We know the celebrated visit of Narada to Dwarka. And one of the circumstances that takes place is Krishna's father, Vasudeva, who is residing in Dwarka, takes the opportunity to hear from Narada very confidential glories of his son, Krishna. And in the course of describing Krishna's glories, which is very, very sweet, very wonderful, Narada is also describing, among other things, the value, the honor that's given by learned persons to the age of Kali. As this image on the screen shows, mode of ignorance, pictured on our left, and mode of passion, pictured on our right, and the blazing fire of material existence, shown in the middle and in the background, are primary symptoms of this age of Kali. It's not glorified. It's something to get relief from. But let's hear what Narada says to Vasudeva about the glories of this dark age of Kali. Those who are actually advanced in knowledge are able to appreciate the essential value of this age of Kali. Such enlightened persons worship Kali Yuga. Why? Because in this fallen age, all perfection of life can easily be achieved by the performance of Sankirtan. It's a little surprising that learned, enlightened persons worship Kali Yuga, not because it's an ocean of faults. There's plenty of reason to find it quite abominable and loathsome. But they worship because of this mahaguna, this one good quality, that is performance of the congregational chanting. Indeed, there is no higher possible gain for embodied souls forced to wander throughout the material world than the Supreme Lord's Sankirtan movement, by which one can attain the supreme peace and free oneself from the cycle of repeated birth and death. One can free oneself from the cycle of repeated birth and death. Scripture teaches us that's the human mission. And not just freedom from the cycle of repeated birth and death, but param vrajet, to attain Krishna's abode. These Sankirtan movement can deliver that directly, despite our shortcomings, despite the contaminations and everything. So now, for your pleasure, I want to show a little video clip of Srila Prabhupada giving a lecture in New York City. Somehow I was in the presence of Srila Prabhupada speaking this particular lecture, and I'd like you to appreciate his message. So please listen very carefully. It's not coming. I have to go full screen. No, it's full. It's not coming out of my computer either, because I can take this out and it's not coming at all. I have to go full screen. That may be it. Okay. Maybe it's over here. No. Oh, Govinda. Yeah. It doesn't work by touching the screen. That's been disabled. For the live stream folks, we're very sorry. It's not behaving properly, the sound. I think we'll just go ahead to the next slide. Many of you have seen this already, and if you haven't, I guess we can try to, through technology, forward to those of you that would like a copy, and we can forward a copy of it to you. That's the live stream. So what we're going to do for the purpose of this recording is it'll just be inserted in the recording, and we're going to go on to the next slide. I hope that's okay. The video clip that you just saw has some really powerful messages, and one of my favorite exchanges with Srila Prabhupada I'll share with you from the very same temple room. This is the Henry Street, celebrated Henry Street, Brooklyn Temple. That's where Prabhupada was when he was speaking that class. And during that particular visit, I remember very clearly it was a hot summer day, and during the school year, the temple, which was a double brownstone rented building right on the corner, right across the street on the same corner was an elementary school. And the elementary school had a playground that was all paved, and surrounding the large playground, there was a 10-foot tall, painted black, wrought iron fence. And what would happen on a daily basis, 5 days of the week during the school year, is after the morning program and breakfast, the devotees would go marching Harinam Sankirtan to the subway, and then come back for lunch. And on the way back for lunch, it was the same time as the lunch hour for the elementary school. And so when we were coming back from the subway to the temple, the children, the elementary school children, would line up, press their face right against the fence, look through the fence, and make fun of the devotees chanting. You know, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, ha 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 ha. And they would happen every day. And a whole group of them, and making laughter. So one particular morning, Srimad Bhagavatam class, I remember this very clearly. Trivikram Maharaj was in the audience, and when it came time for questions, he was the first one to raise his hand. Prabhupada called on him. He stood up. Those of you that know Trivikram Swami, you can just picture in your mind. He stood up and said, Srila Prabhupada, when the school children next to the temple make fun and laugh at the devotees chanting, is that an offense? And much to everyone's surprise, immediately Prabhupada said, no, that's very good. Because we didn't exactly understand Namabhas at that time. Hela Namabhas and Sanketa Namabhas and so forth, they're described in 6th canto, Bhagavatam, that had not been published yet. So we were quite surprised. But that's an important teaching for us, and I want to share with you some realization, factual experience about how that was, what Prabhupada said is true. Some 20 years later, as a sannyasi, I was traveling, going through the Detroit airport in a transit lounge, going from one flight to the next flight, just standing in the hallway waiting for the boarding process to begin. And down a long, narrow corridor was a group of airline employees laughing very loudly and carrying on and having a good time together. And as they came closer and closer to the departure lounge where I was waiting, one in that group of airline employees stopped and looked at me like he saw a ghost. And he said to his friends, You go ahead, I'll catch up with you shortly. And he came straight to me, looked me right in the eye, and said, are you a Hare Krishna? And I said, how did you know? But yeah, I'm a Hare Krishna devotee. And he grabbed his head and said, oh no. And I was wondering what that meant. So I asked him. And he said, I'm living in Detroit now, but I grew up in Brooklyn. And right near the right near where my home was a Hare Krishna temple. And I said, oh really? I lived in that Hare Krishna temple. And he took both hands and said, oh no. And I said, what's wrong? He said, we were really bad. When we were going to school, in elementary school, and your members would come back banging on your drums and playing your cymbals and singing, we'd come by the fence and just laugh at you. Hare Krishna, Hare, and he began the melody. And I said, I remember all of that happening. And he did it again, oh no. And then he went on to explain, we treated you people so badly, not just the kids in the elementary school, but neighbors would throw rocks through your windows. When you left your cars on the street and took a parking place overnight, somebody would come along and burn your cars, so you had to stop putting your cars on the street, taking a parking space. We treated you so badly, but you never did bad things to us. You always treated people kindly, and you fed people. You're really good people, and we were so bad. And I was a little surprised to hear his feelings about what was true, what he said was true. The neighborhood was a rough neighborhood. It wasn't a commercial, it was a residential neighborhood. And the temple devotees weren't treated kindly. The whole circumstance was a little difficult. And then he went on to say that that melody that you sang, it stayed with me. Throughout my childhood and even up until today, the melody would just appear in my mind. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And just today, when we got out of work, and I was with my fellow employees, I not only thought of the melody, but I sang the melody. And you know what? They just laughed at me like we used to laugh at you. And I could understand that must be what karma is, because we laughed at you and now they're laughing at me. But you people did good work. You did such good work. Even if people don't appreciate, keep up the good work. So I thought, at the moment, Krishna speaking through him, how important, who can say, like Prabhupada said in that video, people may understand, they may not understand. It creates an atmosphere of auspiciousness. So not only the Sankirtan in our temples and before the deities and different Harinam festivals, Nama Yagyas, and so many nice things, the congregational chanting into the public is so important. As this image shows, our connection with Krishna is made when we're chanting individually, chanting japa, or congregationally, or speaking his glories. This is the prime benediction for humanity at large. And so I'm really happy to be part of the World Holy Name Festival and offering some appreciation to our founder Acharya and to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all of the associates, even today, who are carrying forward with great enthusiasm the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I thank you all for allowing me to be part of this festival, particularly Lokanath Maharaj kindly inviting me to speak. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki, Nama Sankirtan ki, Gaur Premanandi. So that's it for our presentation, for the recording. And I don't know, do you think there's some way that the devotees who are live stream can hear this recording? Okay. Okay. When the whole thing gets set up, you'll be able to see the whole recording. That's how we'll do it, rather than sending it to individuals. When the World Holy Name recording is complete, with the video clip inserted, we can send it out, the link we can send out to whoever would like to listen to the recording that's part of this whole presentation. So let's see if there's, from the live stream participants or people in the room, if there's some discussion you'd like to take up.
This Douglas Prabhu has written a long, 4 or 5 sentences, 4 or 5 lines paragraph. I'll read it out.
Okay.
I was always amazed by Srila Prabhupada's steadfastness of service to his spiritual master.
Yeah.
He was instructed to preach Krishna consciousness to the Western nations, and if he ever accumulated money to print books. Without his steadfastness, we would not be here.
That's right.
The depth of his surrender to Krishna is also gargantuan. He came to America with almost no money, shelter, or food. Krishna gave him what he lacked and protected him, and supplied all knowledge. However, in your Monday presentation, you implied that Prabhupada's greatness attribute was his devotion to the holy name. You had the good fortune to witness Prabhupada's attribution in person. So you are very qualified to guide us, Maharaj. Out of the big three, service, surrender, and the holy name, which is the most important?
Which is the most important between what and what?
Service, surrender, and holy name. And can you also comment on their interrelationship and proper implementation by aspiring devotees?
Well, you want to separate those three, and I don't know why you want to separate those three. Because chanting of the holy name without service and surrender is incomplete. Service and surrender without the holy name is wonderful, but not yet complete. So don't separate them and say this is more important, this is greater, and the others means, the implication is they're lesser. Bhakti, devotional service, is the chanting. It starts with namadi, begins with the chanting of the holy name. And the mood is not just a behavior, but it's submission and surrender and service. So don't separate them. And the second question is how to apply these teachings, yes? Well, read Prabhupada's books and you'll get the how-to very clearly. Read Prabhupada's books regularly and you'll have the how-to very clearly embedded in your heart. And associate with qualified devotees, sadhu sangha, and they'll help train you in the application of those how-to principles. That's my advice.
And a comment from Ananda Vrindavan Mataji. Thank you for that very wonderful story. It made me cry of joy how wonderful the chanting of the holy name. And Uma Mataji was asking, how does one decide if they should chant in solitary or with others or on the streets? This is also This is after prescribed chanting is done.
Well, when there's pandemic, you have to be careful. But I'll assume the question is a non-pandemic circumstance. All of them have their place. So the congregational chanting in the public, in addition to after completing a prescribed chanting, has special importance, but circumstances may not permit, like weather may not permit. But then we can, perhaps when the weather becomes winter in the northern parts of the United States, we can find venues, purposefully find venues, where the devotees can come together with the public and chant. And when we have our indoor chanting, or our chanting where it's primarily devotees, we want to encourage those who are newcomers or the innocent people to also participate. But the congregational chanting in the public, this is my opinion, its importance has diminished from the time of Srila Prabhupada. And there's an emphasis that goes, the pendulum has swung in the other direction. Not that it's completely over there, but in the direction of coming together amongst devotees and having Sankirtan, which is sublime and beneficial like anything. Krishna is pleased. So let the pendulum swing a little bit the other direction. Emphasis upon the public congregational chanting of the holy name when possible. Not, radical or fanatical or something, but when possible. That's very nice. Next. Anything in the room?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. My question is this message from Srila Prabhupada. It's really very powerful. I can feel that. And the question is sometimes it happens when we chant, we do 16 rounds. So sometimes it happens the whole day, though we organized, like the big rocks putting first,
Yes.
and after the small
Yes.
rocks.
Yes.
So, but sometimes it happens I'm not able to do, and when I sit and do chanting, so it makes me feel like I just want to complete it. So in my case, what I do is I just go to the next day to complete that rounds. So is that okay?
It's not ideal, but it's okay. And ideal is you strive to complete the same day. I caution you about the feeling, I'm now chanting the remaining of my 16 rounds just because it's numerical chanting and it's not devotional chanting. Chant anyways. The numerical chanting has its strength. And by that dedication to an instruction, not just, our particular spiritual master, but our founder Acharya gave that instruction, so we adhere to instructions as far as we can. No, so that's more ideal. And the other is also okay, but less ideal. Don't beat yourself up either way. Oh, I'm chanting round just because it's numerical chanting. Or the other way that you described, feeling morose about our insufficiency isn't going to make sufficiency. isn't going to make elevation. So you know yourself and you know your nature, and you make your best effort as you can and strive for the higher standard. And ideal is not always the case, but ideal is rise early and do that chanting early. That's ideal. And there's always going to be exceptions to the ideal. Okay?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Every time somebody asks a question, I get my answers from their questions. Yesterday, you discussed about Nama, the power of Nama, and even though they do Nama Bhas, there is so much potency, and let them do it. I am convinced, but that was very helpful for me. Even today, also because I've been challenged by my little one. My elder one is convinced, but my little one is not convinced. She does.
What's the word?
My little one, my daughter,
Little one.
little one.
Little one, okay.
So she challenges my faith. She says, "I chant because I love you, but I don't love Krishna." So it's hard for me to convince her. Of course, but I still let her do. But I am putting conditions. So it's like it's not unconditional love I'm teaching her. I feel like I'm teaching her conditional love. At this, she's 9 years old, and how Krishna is so merciful that he's revealing his mercy through by allowing us to call his name. By chanting his name, his form is revealed. That was very helpful yesterday. I just did not know how to put it in words. Just wanted to share that, Maharaj. But if there is any suggestion on how I can convince my little one on the faith, how to help her to develop the faith in Krishna.
Parenting question. My first recommendation is that you discuss with other parents that have been through this and what's their experience. Because some children are more inclined, some are less inclined. What do you do with those that are less inclined, but they're not rebellious? It's a parenting challenge or opportunity. Look at it either way. There's what you do want and what you don't want. What you don't want is compliance, but then a resentment because of pressure for compliance. What that means is that later, when the child is more adult and more independent, there's the pushback because of resentment from being pushed. So you don't want that. You want something that's sustainable. So how, as a parent, to get a child to engage in devotional activity when during at least a certain stage or phase there's an unwillingness? That's the art of parenting. And what may work for one child may not work as well for another child, etc. So there's what works for some parents may not be the same for you because your child is different and so forth. But there are principles to look at. And this is me speaking, I'm not a parent, but you want to be able to look out, get on the same side of the table as your daughter, 9-year-old, and look out at the world and help her see what the opportunity is and invite her to come with you with that opportunity. As long as it's voluntary and not a willingness to be with you as you're going forward, and not pressure and guilt and shame and all those other kind of emotions, then and you understand that and she understands that, and you're moving together on that basis, just like you may, or others may be engaged in chanting because it's an obligation, it's a duty, as Prabhupada puts it. We chant 16 not because we have taste, but because it's duty. And this duty is a commitment to the spiritual master and the bhakti process, because it's told to us, and we accept what's told to us voluntarily, so that we do, not because there's taste. So so whatever that space is, because children's personalities are each different, what can bring about a voluntary participation from your daughter, do that. And maybe there's some other thing that she likes to do, and you do those things that she likes to do. Maybe it's reading together, maybe it's kirtan, and just, the sangha with Krishna in some other form than japa. Because many kids struggle. They're really not attracted to japa. And, pressure doesn't bring an attraction for japa. It brings a resentment to pressure. So, how to navigate that position depends upon you and the child. And you can hear from others, but there's no cookie cutter answer. It's the relationship between mother and daughter that will help her take steps in that direction. By the loving relationship that exists between you. It's nice that she's able to say to you directly, it's out of love for you that I'm doing.
Thank you, Maharaj. I'll try.
There's a follow-up question from Uma Mataji. Outside of COVID, when can a devotee decide to engage in solitary kirtan?
During COVID?
Outside of the COVID.
After? Oh, as much as you like. As much as you like. It's Prabhupada did it. As busy as Prabhupada was, he, on a daily basis, would sit with his harmonium, because I observed it personally. He would sit with his harmonium and engage in kirtan and bhajan. Not, for any other reason than associating with Krishna in that manner. That's solitary bhajan has its place. Okay?
Amara Mataji was asking, while chanting, I realized that there was another voice that was trying to deeply call for Krishna, just for a little speck of time. Because of that little voice, it felt like the chanting I was doing was only on surface level,
Only on surface level.
and that was unsettling me. Is this something to ponder on, or I should just go ahead for a quality hearing?
The second option. The experience, the emotions that one experiences in the course of purification need not be so deeply pondered. The essence is the relationship with Krishna, and stay with the essence. And things will come and things will go, and that's quite okay. Stay with investing in the relationship with Krishna, whatever the rest happens between, Krishna and your mind and Krishna in your heart. Stay with Krishna. Okay, Prabhupada ki jai.